I'm going, oh, great, see people from all over the world already joining in. We do have a packed agenda today, so I am just going to briefly introduce. My name is Kate Russell. I am the Chief Operating Officer here at Multiple, and we are thrilled to have you join us today. It's really such an exciting conversation around technology and non-speakers and what the possibilities can be. As you likely know, if you're joining, this is a young field and one that's evolving, youngish field, and one that's evolving quickly. So we're really passionate to bring together an amazing group today to talk about what's happening and what's next. At Multiple, we're really passionate about technology, as you know, and the non-speaking community is one of the areas that we're really going to begin to focus on over the next few months here. So this event is just the kickoff to what will be happening. We'll be hosting several events, and all of this will be culminating on a report on the technology that is out there for access to communication. So please stay in touch with us over these next few months. We'd love to continue the dialogue. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dan Feshbach, the founder of Multiple, to share a little bit more and introduce our panel. Let me get Dan up here with us.
Hi. Hey, hi everyone. And hey, Kate, I thought we were going to have you follow with the introductions, but if you want me to, I can.
Absolutely, I will. I'm sorry to introduce the topic. I'll introduce the panel.
Yeah, good. Great. Well, look, welcome everyone. It's we're here out of a passion that we all have around the community that is, in my opinion, most underlooked in the autism world. I have a guy, his name is Reed. You may have heard about him through some of my posts or conversations that we've had. So his journey has been, or our journey together in this area has really changed a lot about how I think about technology and how I think about what can make a difference. And you're going to hear today in the panel a really great dialogue. We had a prep call that I would have liked to have shared that prep call with this group. It was just the dialogue and the conversation and the expertise that Elizabeth, Diwakar, Winston, and uh, have that will come together today will be really eye-opening, I think. So we're very focused uh, on finding ways for people like my child and many of your children can find reliable communication. And I think my son's journey is sort of punctuated by two things. One is the fact that it's work. It's work to learn to spell. It's not easy, and it's not a miracle. And you'll learn more about that on this call. And the second one is the presumption of competence, which is not actually that easy. It's a mindset that you have to keep reminding yourself. Like I always tell my kids and my son's mom, let's not talk about Reed in front of Reed. Would you like to be talked about when uh, talked about by me when I'm with other friends and you're there? So today we're really talking about pairing the human connection with practical tech. And the webinar is just the beginning. It kicks off an initiative here at Multiple that we want you to help shape. So participate in the chat, and we're going to be asking questions in the chat because we're looking for mentors. We're looking for new ideas. We're looking for thoughts about, wow, if I wish this product existed for my child, my loved one, the person that I'm supporting, however it is. So you're going to you get lots of questions peppered in the chat. And the key thing here is this is a community that we have. It's a community that we're building and learning to build. And we really want your involvement in this phase, in this project and this initiative. The report is going to be a big eye opener. And I think in that context, any company, like, be an ambassador, help us find more companies, help us dig through what's happening at universities so we really understand where tech is going. So with that, Kate, why don't you take it back?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. And thanks for your insights here. I am going to be brief in my introductions here because each of the panelists will have an opportunity to share more on their background. But I just want to underscore that we have such an incredible group of leaders here with us today. We have Dr. Diwakar Krishnamurthy from the University of Calgary, a researcher in the space of non-speaking technology. Elizabeth Vosseller, the founder and executive director at I-ASC and the leader of Spelling to Communicate. Wynston Browne, we have a non-speaking communicator, actor, and filmmaker, and his father, David Browne, who is one of our multiple mentors as well. So we really are jam-packed. I'm going to invite Elizabeth to share with us first and really get to the meat of what we're all here for.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Dan and Kate, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm grateful to be here with such fantastic colleagues. And I'm going to jump right in and share my screen here. And I'm going to set my clock so I try to stay on time. Okay, so I am the executive director of I-ASC.
I
You
apologize,
can find.
Elizabeth. We're not seeing your presentation right
Uh-oh.
now. We were for a bit.
Oh, okay. You know what? I moved it. Let me reshare. I moved it so I'm not looking over to the side looking like a crazy person. There we go. Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. And hold on, let me get my timer up. Uh, all right. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I mostly have slides to keep me on track. I am the executive director of I-ASC and the founder of S2C, which is Spelling to Communicate. So I'm happy to share a little bit about what we do. I-ASC stands for the International Association for Spelling as Communication, and now you know why we call it I-ASC because that's a mouthful. And it's we're an organization and we're composed of all the stakeholders that we serve. So that's non-speaking people and their families, folks in the neurodivergent community, trained practitioners, allies, informed professionals, and researchers. And so we all kind of come together to ensure that there is access to effective communication for non-speaking people. And that includes people who are minimally speaking to those who are unreliably speaking. That is, they speak frequently, but they cannot use speech as an effective means of communication. So that speech is often loopy or scripted or echolalic, but it's not communicative. And our mission at I-ASC is to increase access to communication. We do that in 4 ways: through training, education, advocacy, and research. And it's our vision that with communication, non-speaking individuals have access to the same things everybody else has in life, right? That education, employment, community, friends, those are not special needs, they're human needs. And communication gives you access to all of those things. So we believe that communication is a fundamental human right and that there's as many as 30 million non-speaking people around the world. And that stat is derived from the numbers with autism. 2/3 of autistic people have apraxia, which is this disconnect between brain and body. I'll talk more about that in a second. And 1/3 of the autistic community, their apraxia is significant enough that it affects their ability to speak reliably. Then there's another estimated 5 million people who have other motor sensory disabilities, generally genetic syndromes and conditions that affect their ability to produce speech reliably. So that gives us about 30 million worldwide. So it's a really significant need. We do say non-speaking you may have be more familiar with the term nonverbal, but nonverbal means literally from the Latin without words. And non-speaking folks are not without words. They have excellent comprehension. They have thoughts and ideas inside their head. That's language. They simply lack the speech to be able to share their thoughts and ideas. And like I said, it's an inclusive term of those who don't speak at all, those who speak minimally, which might be a couple hundred words or phrases, or just even a couple words or phrases, and those who speak all the time, but it's not communicative. So apraxia is this breakdown between planning and execution. There is a process that we all use called praxis, and that's going from an idea to a plan to executing that plan, and then receiving the sensory feedback that allows us to adapt our plan if it doesn't go well. So it's really in apraxia, the idea is fine, the plan is fine, but there's a breakdown between planning and execution. And then again, in the sensory feedback loop that allows you to adapt that plan, right? And I use the ASHA definition. And I like to highlight that even ASHA points out that this is not a cognitive need. This is the inability to execute that motor plan, to move the articulators, which are the moving parts to produce speech. So that brings us to spelling to communicate, which is a means of AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, that teaches the purposeful motor skills to communicate. So we take speech out of the gross motor of the mouth and communication out of the hard to use fine motor of the fingers, the digits, and put it in the easier to use gross motor of the arm. And we coach that movement so that individuals can reliably point to letters. So we're working on achieving synchrony between the brain and the body, right? We're trying to mend that gap of apraxia, that motor breakdown, and get the brain and the body working together. And these skills are taught by rigorously trained practitioners and communication partners, right? Who use a hierarchy of verbal cues and gestures. We do not use physical touch to teach these motor skills. And then there's a progression of skills moving from the alphabet split in thirds on a stencil to a unified 26-letter board. The stencils give a tactile feedback to both the practitioner or communication partner and the non-speaker who is learning to spell. Then we move to a laminated board, which is simply the alphabet and on laminate with punctuation backspace. And then eventually we move to a regular QWERTY keyboard. People often ask me, why are the letters in ABC order? ABC order is the order we all learn to read in, right? Typing is in QWERTY because the QWERTY board was set up for the motor of the fingers. So the strongest fingers go to the most frequently used. But ABC order is the order of reading and spelling. And so as we progress on these motor levels, we can start to move from closed-ended, one possible response answers, right, to a text. And that allows for target practice. I know what the target is. I can help the speller develop those motor skills to accurately get to the target letter. To then more open-ended questions. And then once they're at a keyboard level, they can access the same things we all do to communicate. So they can type something into a doc or an Excel spreadsheet or into a PowerPoint. So communication moves from concrete to abstract. One of the things we do, I said our 4 pillars at I-ASC are training, education, advocacy, and research as training practitioners. So to date, we've had 69 practitioner cohorts. We're getting ready to launch our 70th this weekend. We've trained more than 750 practitioners worldwide. So we have practitioners in 44 US states and in 29 countries. And we serve an estimated 20 to 30,000 spellers worldwide. Coming soon, next month, will be our standardized affordable communication regulation partner training. So CRPs are someone who works one-to-one with one speller. So maybe a parent with their child, or a teacher aide with one speller in the classroom. A practitioner is trained to work with any profile, any person who walks through their door. So the training is more advanced. Now, I zoomed through all of that so I could get to the meat of this particular meeting, which is about tech. And so I've kind of put down what I see as some challenges, some considerations, and then opportunities. So two things that we're actually have made some gains in. For years, I've been looking for a way to track the number of spellers we have worldwide. How long does it take to get from one milestone to another? Having a means of communicating with families, uploading and sharing transcripts, being able to track the variables that go on in a non-speaker's life, like their sleep, their nutrition, their health status, how much do they move their body that day? Are they dysregulated? What else is going on that might be affecting their overall performance? And through the last 2 years, we've been collaborating with a company called Be Me AI. I know it's a company that Dan is on their advisory board, and we have created a platform that we can capture data about spelling to communicate. Families can enter in data as well as practitioners. At the individual level, families can see what variables are interacting that are affecting their child's performance. At a practice level, a practitioner can see how their various clients are progressing. And at a network level, at my level at I-ASC, we can see de-identified data that lets us look at average times to reach milestones and what's maybe going on in the profile of those who are outside those norms. So that's just a few things. The ability to practice at home and in other environments, receive sensory and motor feedback. You're going to hear from that from my colleagues, my colleague, Dr. Krishnamurthy, who has been part of our community for quite some time now. So here's where I see the real gaps here is we need more research. We need to be getting input from university researchers in collaboration with trained practitioners who are in the trenches every day, and of course with non-speakers and their families. We need some challenges here. Accessibility and usability barriers. iPads can be great and screens can be great. Touch sensitivity on the screen is really hard for people whose fundamental disability is motor and sensory. So you have to be lined up just right. As an iPad user, I take copious notes on my iPad every day. I know if I'm not lined up right with it, I can't get it to work. The other issue is there is a lot of screen addiction in our population. Another consideration are AI risks. I think there's great opportunities with AI, but we also have to be really careful with certain things like autofill or an influencer prediction bias. We really protect the integrity of the non-speaker's message, and we don't know where that's going until they're finished spelling it. But I think there's other great ways to use AI. The inequality in technology access. We have communities in South Africa and Namibia and places even in the US, where affordability and access to technology is a real issue. The AI risk of misrepresentation of speller communication. Just even what's out there on social media these days. Digital fatigue and sensory overload. So we have to be really careful about that. And the other thing is just commercial exploitation. We know that in the disability community, there are necessary services and necessary tools. And I believe that folks who do that work and practice do need to have a job and be able to have a roof over their head. But it's also making sure that we're not just creating money-making opportunities for folks that are out of reach for families. So I think there's a fine line there. And again, I think it's the thing that resonates most with me is that design, research, all of it must include the participation of practitioners who are in the trenches every single day. One size may not fit all. There's methodologies that have very different protocols. So how can we adapt accordingly? And then, of course, the input of non-speakers is critical because it's really, they need to be co-designers, not just end users. And their lived experience is more valuable than probably anything else. So, I really appreciate your time and your attention, and I look forward to your thoughts on all the great stuff you'll hear today.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you for fitting so much into a short time. We know you
I
probably fill a
think
few
I even
hours.
went over and I was super zippy, so thank you.
We appreciate it. Please feel free to drop questions for Elizabeth into the chat. We will come back after the presentations with Q&A for all of our panelists, so please continue to do so. We are now going to welcome David and Wynston Browne to share their perspectives with us.
5, 4, 3. Yes.
Perfect. Let me see. I can see you are sharing your screen now. We do not have you on video if you would like to join us on video. There we are. Perfect.
All righty. So let me start by telling you all, Wynston is going through a little bit of a challenging week for two important reasons. One, he is literally being weaned off of the iPhone and the iPad this week. So Dan and others can testify what torment our poor young man is going through in doing that. We took advantage of this opportunity to do that because he had a seizure, a fall, and a concussion just last week. So he's not quite himself from a spelling accuracy standpoint. Are you all hearing, seeing me? I gotta
We are hearing you. Yes, we do not have your presentation up just yet. We can see your files open.
Got it. Okay.
Go. And if you need help, I'm happy to pull it up as well.
Do you want to open a read only?
Go back.
Okay. Let me know if you see that.
Go back.
We are not seeing it. Would you like me to share on my end and we can advance?
Sure. Or
Okay.
let me, you know what? Let me just try the PDF instead of the PowerPoint and see if that wants to behave.
It might be that you're not. Oh, there we go. I see you
Well,
now.
I stopped that and now I'm going to try again.
Go back. I did. Go back. Go back.
Excellent. We now see it.
Okay, fantastic. And let's just see if, yep, it looks like we have liftoff.
Look at 51.
Okay. So sorry. So what I was just saying is he's a little foggy from the recent concussion and he's here. If there's time for Q&A and he can answer some questions directly, he will do that. But this presentation is fully co-developed. So I just want to reinforce that everybody understands that. There are, as I think with all autistic non-speakers, there are 2 or 3 identities that they consume in the course of their day. And that is life with and without their communication and regulation partner. And there's life before and after being open-ended with that communication partner. So what I think is important to understand is the genesis of the journey and what is a quite extraordinary visionary journey in action, in a sense, with our son. And what I'm going to spend less time in are all the hardships that got to this point, because he's had such a unique epiphany over the last couple of years, becoming an open speller, and I'll explain what that means. We're going to focus a little bit more on the vision state and aspirationally what we want every speller to find in life, every opportunity, from a CRP who is incredibly partnered and open with our communicators, and someone who has access to and included in the best life has to offer, to Elizabeth's point about relationship and society. And there we are. So the first chapter of Wynston's life was the majority of his life. All the way from birth through age 14, Wynston was a classic case of profound, low-functioning, non-speaking, aka formerly known as nonverbal autism. He was diagnosed very early by both Connecticut Birth to Three and the Yale Child Study Center with that autism. He had classic low muscle tone, low IQ, no social inclination, a loner, locked in his world. These are all quotes from doctors, from educators. Tendency to stim on childish videos, rock, clap his hands, prone to eloping, highest level of need. That's a Department of Disability Services, a state organization classification. And most essentially, intellectually and developmentally disabled, which is the critical misdiagnosis of autistics who are non-speaking because of what Elizabeth described, the misunderstanding of apraxia as correlating with intellectual disability, which it is not a causal driver of whatsoever. Since Wynston's apraxia diagnosis in the last 3 years, he has been with, I don't know if you can see, Elisa Feynman right here has been with Wynston for a decade and a half, extended family for sure. And she's been on that journey with us, a classically trained educator. She became a trained CRP, and it's through her magnificent relationship with Wynston, which is not a magical relationship. It is an earned relationship. It is based on trust and respect. It is a choreography, and it is a dance that is done out of mutual reverence and respect and understanding, and an educator's eye for how to not only presume competence, which, as Dan said, is very, very tough to do day to day, but to actually find methods of inquiry that work for the learner. And that is the essence of what great educators do, right? Universal design for learning is about understanding the unique and individual needs of the learner, but this ability to actually understand what do they need uniquely and how can I prompt, probe, coach to get that out of them. That's what all great educators do. And that at their best is what a CRP does, or one facet of what they do. Since that apraxia diagnosis and since being openly communicating, opening meaning Wynston is now capable of open-ended, fully creative, intentional, expressive language and communication creation. He is writing full paragraphs. He is in general education classes at his regular classrooms now. When his body enables him to stay regulated, when they don't pull him out prematurely because they view him as disruptive to the general education environment, which happens all the time, or they don't bring him back on a time-sensitive basis, he loses that class. And that's a tragic loss for someone who's catching up literally for over a decade of missed learning opportunity because he was understood to be intellectually disabled. He was never taught at appropriate grade level. 2 years ago, Wynston starred in a film about his life. It's called Presumed Incompetent. On the upper left of your screen is the movie poster. He actually was awarded Best Actor at the Ethos Film Festival in LA for his work on this film. That's him with Cynthia Gibb, the director, at Dances with Films in LA. That's him laughing amongst media and peers of what did you call them, Wynston? Beautiful people, lights, camera, action at its best. So that's how he described what it was like to be at a film festival and the worldwide premiere of his film. He is also an advocate, and he is an advocate for all those who come behind him, recognizing that there are so many who don't have families with the resources, the outreach, and the flexibility which is demanded to support this this journey that he is on and that our non-speakers are on. Our family's been involved in the Spark Simons autism genetic research, which is the largest autism study ever. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of families participating. Winston and I were on a panel recently in New York City. It was a compensated role, to Elizabeth's point. He is also a compensated story editor on the film The Telepathy Tapes. Based on the podcast series now in season 2 since last week, Winston is one of the featured actors. It's a documentary, so he's not acting, he's just being Winston. But his love story with his girlfriend, also a non-speaking autistic and apraxic young lady named Nina Meehan, they are both have lead roles in that movie, and they are both story editors, compensated story editors for that film. Winston has also been involved at Harvard Law School, advocating and teaching law students about communication rights and about IDEA and about disability rights. And he has been at Stanford learning to be a better advocate for neurodiverse individuals like himself. And he is also participating actively in a study called NICE, N-I-C-E, which is actually seeking to re-engineer the relationship between psychiatrists and their neurodiverse patients. It's actually looking more broadly at all of medical service provision, but very specifically also focusing on psychiatry as a sub-practice. Apraxia, Elizabeth is such an expert in the field. Who would I be to try to add anything to that? But let me just say that there are dimensions that are so essential to the role of a CRP that surface through our awareness of apraxia. The majority of educational practitioners, including special educators, do not understand apraxia today. And I'm talking about private schools, most public schools. And so what we need, an evolved model of autism includes the understanding of motor and the presence of motor apraxia, and the recognition that the STIM behaviors, this disruptive and dysfunctional behaviors, as they're called by special educators, that does demand regulation, but it's also a source of relief and release for our children. And society needs to do the adjusting, I would argue. And I think many others share that opinion. Most importantly, not an intellectual disorder, and that is the essential disconnect between the historical medical model and the educational model of autism and what we now understand about apraxia. So Elizabeth mentioned 30 some odd million non-speakers today. We think that's about 5 million in the United States. So just from a market scale, you know, what is the order of magnitude of opportunity? What is the addressable market, if you will? It's 75 million with autism globally, and I think Elizabeth said we're talking about 30,000 alone that she has touched and her organization has touched. So this 10,000 active spellers is a very low number, and I apologize for that. Elizabeth also referenced there are sensory differences in our students, in our learners, and many of them do prefer the tactile sensation of a 3D keyboard. It provides feedback. And the classic assistive technologies that are made available, especially in public schools, tend to default to highly simplistic Proloquo, Proloquo to go, other newer releases, but icon-driven AAC devices. They view those as neither super accessible and certainly not preferred. The iconography is deemed as infantilizing and overly simplistic and restrictive. It's not open-ended communication. By definition, it is closed-end forced choice communication.
Can I add something to that?
We don't have time, sorry. And the other thing is that many schools are using the current technologies as an excuse to avoid recruiting and training communication and regulation partners. Well, your student is using an assistive technology device. He has his effective means of communication. Well, I do have a slide on, it's an optional slide on the legality of the requirement for the communication, effective communication as identified by the learner. It is not for the school, it is for the learner to identify their means of effective communication. One of the disconnects in people's understanding is, why is a third party, a second human being necessary? Why can't our kids simply either type directly by themselves, or why can't they on a keyboard, on a stand, actually reach out and touch? And the first and foremost simple point to understand is, most of these apraxic communicators do not initiate their communication. For so many of us who have ADHD children in their families, they need to understand initiation is one of the highest barriers, highest hurdles in communication, and also in energized activity. And ADHD, those traits are extremely comorbid with autism. And those of you who are on the call who are on the autism spectrum, I know you're not nodding your head at this one. So the need for support to initiate. The second, and this is arguably the more important one that the schools really need help with, which is sensory and regulation, self-regulation. The level of dysregulation and the physicality associated with that dysregulation, and sometimes the perceived or misperceived violence of that dysregulation, that is a huge issue in our schools. And so the providing of a communication and regulation partner, someone who can help our students calm their bodies, calm their minds, attend, focus, and do all the things that I-ASC and others are teaching our communication partners to help our communicators do, to get their intended thoughts out into the world. And that's connecting their brain and their body. And very often that is a coached or motor prompted process. And what that is enabling is this migration to more accessible gross motor skills from the inaccessible fine motor skills, and from a sustained and enduring capacity and capability standpoint, a neurological rewiring. So many of us are familiar with the notion of neuroplasticity. Well, that is the field that Elizabeth is in. It's in engineering neuroplasticity with our children.
David, I'm so sorry to have to jump in here. We are going to have to wrap up shortly so we can ensure Dr. Diwakar can share his thoughts as well. So is there any last thoughts before we pass the baton?
Yeah, a point of optimism. Evelyn Yang, who is the wife of Andrew Yang, they are both autism parents. She is actively lobbying to get occupational therapists approved by Medicaid nationally for CRP funding. That is coming out of an initiative from the telepathy tapes. And I did want to mention that since September 2023, Harvard College is now accepting communication partners in their classrooms. If you look at the second bullet point here, communication partners assist students who use alternative means of communication, such as letterboards, tablets, and apps. Harvard is a leader in this field. High schools, secondary schools have not followed. Elementary schools have not followed. These are some of the legal context and rights, but know that it is, our children should have rights to this kind of communication. And I'll just leave this on your screen to look at for 5 or 10 seconds. These are some of the markets, the paying customers, the kinds of marketplaces that those of you who will be entrepreneurs or are entrepreneurs in this marketplace. I know that Dan's experience is very much that Family Direct is a strong way to go. Certainly the big bucks are with the healthcare and insurance industry, and special education is really broken and a huge barrier in this process, and special education administrators who are overburdened with compliance and tend to revert to the legal process as opposed to staying educationally focused, some of our biggest hurdles. So know, as an entrepreneur, these are your hurdles, these are your opportunities, and that's what we are happy to share today. Turn it over to our good friend, Dr. Diwakar.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you for your advocacy and for all of this incredible information. We'll now move over to Dr. Diwakar Krishnamurthy to share about technology specifically and what he's doing in this space. I apologize. I have you on mute here.
Can everybody see the slides okay?
Yes,
Right,
perfect. Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Kate and Dan, for having me here. Good afternoon. My name is Diwakar Krishnamurthy. I'm a professor in the Department of Electrical and Software Engineering at the University of Calgary. And I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about our work, participatory research work with the non-speaking community, and why I believe it has the potential to transform communication outcomes for this really underserved and marginalized population. So I only get to talk about this work. This work is actually done by my amazing group of trainees, postdocs, and grad students and undergrad students at University of Calgary. So a huge thank you and shout out to them. And also a huge shout out to Dr. Vikram Jaswal and his great team at the University of Virginia. All of this work I'm going to be presenting today is done in collaboration with them. So why did I start doing this work? I started doing this work around 2021, and the motivation was very, very simple. I think we have heard both of our previous speakers talk about it. Non-speaking voices have historically been absent from the design of technology intended to help them, right? So and this goes directly against the nothing about us without us philosophy. Somehow when it comes to non-speakers, that philosophy is rarely ever practiced. And what this has caused is that we have now a proliferation of all these augmentative communication tools. David mentioned the iconographic tools, for example, which don't really work for this population, right? And no, it's not very surprising because the inputs, the lived experience of non-speaking folks has never been reflected into the design of these systems. So my motivation was, can we kind of shake that up? Can we change that? And especially, spelling-based communication, spelling-based training seems to have a lot of good outcomes for many people. Just a couple of months ago, one of EV's former students got admitted to MIT. So certainly it's having a lot of good outcomes to a lot of people. And by no means are these instances isolated. So when I started the work, the basic idea was, can a more participatory approach with this community yield novel and actually usable communication tools, communication training technologies to this really underserved population? So that was the broad question with which I started. And of course, I only have 5 minutes or so I'm not going to go into all the gory details. What I want to focus on this talk is the collaboration between between humans and technology, right? So really a strong strand of my research has been to figure out what are the things practitioners, CRPs, the human educators are really good at doing, and what are the things technology is good at doing. And if you can kind of separate those rules, I believe the outcomes would be much better than what they are right now. So one of the early works we did, this was right after COVID in 2021, where we actually consulted with a couple of non-speaking folks who started with letterboards and are moved to independent communication, OTs and communication partners. An interesting insight which came out of these conversations, and again, it speaks to the value of engaging with lived experiences, that augmented reality could really be helpful for non-speakers, right? And before I kind of describe how, let me just talk about augmented reality. I'll share this demo from Microsoft. So as you can see in this demo, with augmented reality, you wear a headset. In this case, the headset is called the HoloLens. In contrast to virtual reality, you're not isolated in a virtual environment. You can still see your real environment, which in this case is a classroom. But the classroom can be embellished with virtual objects. In this case, it's a periodic table, right? And you can interact with elements of the periodic table, these virtual artifacts, through various gestures, right? You can kind of grab at them, you can resize them, you can poke them, you can interact with your gaze, and so on and so forth, right? So now, how can this technology be useful to non-speakers? And if you really think about it, the first advantage of AR is that it's not fully immersive, right? A non-speaker can be engaging in educational activities. They could still see the real world. They could still see their favorite communication partner, their parents, which can be a good anxiety mitigation approach, right? The second set of advantages that all of the things, great things which Evie talked about, like motor skills training, like training the motor, coaching the motor, can actually be done really well in an AR setting. For example, you could have a giant letterboard the size of a room to get those gross motor skills going and transition those gross motor skills into fine motor skills. You can actually work with a non-speaker who's doing regulatory movement. A lot of our kids, a lot of the folks in this population, they tend to move as a regulation mechanism, right? Now, you don't have to stifle the movement. You can have a virtual letterboard, and the environment on the virtual letterboard can follow the user movement, right? And of course, you can implement all sorts of AI-enabled regulation, emotional regulation, executive function support. You can implement context-aware scaffolds, which Elizabeth talked about, like slowly coaching them and thoughtfully withdrawing the supports as they progress in their spelling journey. So all of this is possible, and unfortunately, I don't have time to talk about the work we did from this initial consultation in 2021 to 2025. And this time, we developed a virtual letterboard system called the HoloBoard. We did a study which showed that augmented reality headsets can be tolerated by non-speakers. We built an educational app. We built a lot of technology to make these headsets more accessible to this population. But I'm not going to be talking about all that. I'm going to be talking about two case studies, which we just did this year. Both of the studies were done this year. The first one addresses a big problem which Evie mentioned. So imagine that I'm somewhere in rural Alberta and I'm a non-speaker and I want to learn how to spell, right? And currently, access to practitioners and communication partners is not that great, right? It'll be really good if you can somehow teleport Evie or somebody like her to the living room of this non-speaker. But of course, we know that's not science, it's only science fiction. So what we managed to do was the next best thing in our mind, which is use a technology called as augmented reality telepresence. And you can see pictures from our user sessions here. So how does this work? So essentially with this technology, what happens is that both the non-speaker, the student, and the educator wear a headset. They're on different geographical locations. Both of them see avatars of each other. In this case, the teacher sees an avatar of the student sees an avatar of the teacher in their field of view, right? They also both have access to a shared letterboard or keyboard. And whatever actions the non-speaker is doing on the keyboard, they are transmitted at real time to the teacher. So the teacher can actually at real time monitor what is being spelled and so on. And they can also coach accordingly, following all the standard practices which communication partners and practitioners do, right? For example, give encouragement, support, motor coaching, and all the time, all of these things in real time. And all of the support given by this remote teacher is again transmitted via the avatar to the student in the remote location. So essentially with this system, what you get is you get a sense of being there, right? It's much better in our opinion than doing a Zoom call or doing an audio only remote session where you're trying to practice spelling, because practicing spelling is a very, very motor task. Again, how did people view the system? So we did a study. We had 16 participants and 15 of them actually were able to do a spelling lesson consisting of 4 lesson vignettes followed by questions completely in the virtually together condition. That is, they were only supported by the communication partner or practitioner virtually, right? Nobody was physically present. In fact, the communication partner was not even physically touching the virtual letterboard. It's just a virtual thing. They just placed it. And 15 of the 16 finished the lesson fine without any trouble. Within 1 hour of introducing the technology. And what we found from looking at the data was that the technology fostered faster initiation than just giving audio-only prompts. We had a competing condition where the educator would give verbal prompts, but the student would not be able to see the educator. That resulted in slower initiation of typing interactions than using the avatar. And in general, educators were able to give more focused instructions, obviously, because they could at real time see where the fingers were, what the student was trying to do, and so on, right? In general, all of the participants preferred the virtually together condition over the audio only condition. Okay, so I want to finish by looking at the follow-on work we are doing, which is we are developing an AI-enabled spelling coach who can complement and work in collaboration with a trained educational and a practitioner, right? And the idea here is to build practice, right? We have heard stories of even people who have access to practitioners to learn spelling, that the access is limited. Maybe you get to see them an hour in a week, right? So, but what happens rest of the week? So the whole idea here is that a skilled practitioner can configure this spelling coach, and the spelling coach can deliver focused spelling lessons to a particular speller, depending on where they are at right now, right? And again, the idea is not to replace the human practitioners, but really it's a collaboration, it's a synergy, right? So the AI can perhaps lead some activities, but the humans can step in as needed. To give you a kind of an essence of what this tool looks like, this is our virtual spelling coach. Her name is Vic, and I'm going to play a small clip of her introducing herself, and then I will kind of briefly talk about the results from this study.
H-E-L-L-O. Hello again. I'm Vic. I'm here to help you with anything you need and to have a friendly chat. How's your day going? G-O-O-D, comma, space, Y-O-U, question mark. I'm doing great, thank you. What's something you
can see that the coach has a very naturalistic way of talking. She actually has an LLM backend which allows her to kind of respond respond like a human, right? So I'm not going to go play the whole video. I'm just going to jump right into the study. And again, this is an ongoing study. It's not been published yet, but the preliminary results are very, very promising. We had a study with 37 non-speaking participants. And what we found that 31 of them engaged with the system meaningfully, doing a variety of tasks, ranging from doing motor selections to spelling dictated words, to answering questions in a spelling lesson, to even having back and forth conversations. In fact, 11 of our participants, within 1 hour of being initiated into the system, were able to have back and forth conversations with the agent. And I'm going to play an excerpt from one of those. This is a participant, it's a young man, and you can clearly see the synergy between the human practitioner, the human element, and the technology, right? The participant is trying to have a conversation with the agent on the virtual letterboard projected on his headset. He's getting some kind of support, but the support is mostly kind of rephrasing, clarifying things, and so on, right? So hopefully this video will play. My apologies for the sound quality, which is a little bit sketchy, but hopefully you'll be able to follow what's going on.
What did you want to ask Vic?
You would ask Vic about, for example, if there's a golfer that you like, you would ask Vic about a golfer, or if there's a beach here that you want to go to.
Or a specific golf course.
Yeah.
Or you could just ask her how she's doing.
Yeah, or something.
Questions about her.
Or something you're learning about in school and college.
Anything you want.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert, the question he asked was, do you like golf?
You got it. Yeah, she doesn't say space, sorry.
Oh yeah, so you got the space.
Yeah.
Y. U.
Yep.
Space.
L. I. K. E.
You can hit the backspace.
Awesome.
O.
There we go. So do you like to?
G. O. L.
Great. And then when you're done, you can hit.
There you go, hit that.
Golf can be a lot of fun.
It offers a great way to spend time outdoors, enjoy nature, and get some exercise. Do you enjoy playing or watching golf?
So yeah, so this conversation again went on to, I think towards the end, how to improve golf swing. So it kind of gives you a glimpse of the potential of this technology. Anyway, I think I have overstayed my welcome. So in conclusion, I think participatory research is critical. Together as a team, academia, and the community and startup ecosystems, organizations like multiple can really collaborate to transform the quality of life of this, as I said before, a really under-researched and underserved community. So I thank you again for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As anticipated, there was just so much good content that we are almost at time, but we're going to stay on for a few minutes for those who are able to address some questions. So if we could welcome all of our panelists back to the screen. Diwakar, you will see there are quite a few questions in the chat for you, but maybe one broadly that we can talk about in terms of technology in this space, AR specifically maybe, but also broader. Are we largely in a research phase, or are we seeing things out in the market? And, what are the current limitations or barriers?
Great question. We are largely in the research space. I think when we started the work 3-4 years ago, even the concept of non-speakers wearing and tolerating a headset seemed revolutionary. Like we got a lot of pushback around, oh, this is never going to work because there's so much sensory sensitivity. But my argument was there is no study which says they can't, right? It's just anecdotal evidence and hunch. So we've done a lot of great work. And to be honest, I think we have done about 100 user sessions, and the technology is not for everybody. About 10 of those sessions, we had to stop because people couldn't tolerate the headset, but 90 could. And that's the beginning, right? I mean, once you establish that, then you can start looking at the user interface, building the apps, different types of apps for regulation, for typing, spelling, and so on. So yes, I think I wish progress was faster, but I think we have established through our research over 10 papers so far, repeatedly, that this is a technology which the non-speaking community likes, and it's got some potential and some commercialization, and getting this tech to the living rooms of families should be the next important step.
Sure. And we've seen at multiple, just a quick note, a growing number of applications to our accelerator with technologies related to the non-speaking community, not necessarily AR, VR, but other technologies coming. So there are some that are commercially available now. All right. And I'll pose to all of you really just a broad question, but where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation in this space? Or perhaps what future opportunities or innovations excite you the most?
I think Evie mentioned that the collaboration between AI and spelling and technology like VR and AR is exciting. And we need to do it in a very, very thoughtful way. And I show you a glimpse of it. And we have to really build a lot of guardrails so that the AI doesn't take over and hijack, right? So we need to know when AI should stop and when humans should jump in. But I think that's got tremendous potential, because a lot of the motor coaching and body awareness, when you combine the sensing capability of these devices, which can pretty much see your entire hands, and all the movement stuff can be tracked, and that combined with best practices from practitioners, if you can deliver real-time coaching and all of those nice things which people like Evie do, just more opportunities for practicing that at home, I think that would be transformational, because practice makes perfect. And right now, to give you a context, Calgary is a city of almost 2 million people. We have one communication partner who's right now on maternity leave, leaving about 100 families without a communication partner. So I think that's where I see technology as kind of being helpful to complement the expertise of practitioners.
I love the use of AI for, I don't like it for communication, right? Because I don't even like word prediction for communication, because I can't tell you the amount of times I thought someone was spelling B-E-A-U-T and they were going to spell beautiful and they put beauty, or even butte, like a crested butte, right? So word prediction can get tricky, and it could become a motor loop of just going to the first choice offered or the last choice offered or something like that. Where I think AI has got great potential is to do things at speed, like in the Be Me platform, to be able to look at lots of data points and say, oh, do you know what? On days when this non-speaker has poor performance in his sessions and poor sleep, he's having large amounts of sugar or carbs or whatever it might be. We all have different trigger foods and things like that, where it can look at big data points. I think that's really interesting. I think there's really cool evolving technology like the AR, the VR, the eye scanning, the things like that, that give great sensory feedback tools. And I think to Diwakar's point, that having an opportunity to be able to practice and I saw somebody asked about what's the feedback, because you're not touching something. You're not touching something in VR, but you are getting a visual and auditory feedback that you are hitting your intended target, etc. That, I think that makes a really cool platform and even some gamification, of practicing at home to work on that repeated motor skill of pointing with the arm plus scanning with the eyes, making the eyes and the hands work together. That's where I think there's some really cool opportunities, yeah.
David, Winston, anything to
Yeah,
add?
yeah, scaling affordable training. Evie addressed it already, but that's the biggest single hurdle to inclusion. So if we can make that training more accessible, then when that one person in Calgary disappears, 100 spellers won't be stranded.
Yeah. The only thing with training is, the training is rigorous, and we've seen before in history where there's been some shortcuts to that then you have people not doing working to best standards, and non-speaking people have really complicated profiles. So, I think the practice element can be, more time and practice, even a chance for practitioners in training or see our communication regulation partners in training to be able to virtually coach somebody so they get the idea of how do you manage someone's body who is coming off of screen addiction and, a fall, all of those kinds of variables. I think a lot about applications, right, where I've heard where they're teaching folks who are in prison carpentry skills using AI tools, because that's not really ideal to have carpentry tools in jail, but that is really helping with job coaching so that when they, are out, they can do that. I think that kind of thing. And actually even vocational work could be really cool. Various job practice using AI, using VR, using some of those kinds of things. Yeah, I think that that's really helpful. Ron had asked in the chat about, do we supervise CRPs or parents working with their clients remotely via video chat? Yes, and telehealth, we do that. It was actually handy that because long before COVID, we did not have people everywhere. We got very good at video support for families who are working with their kids. And so when COVID hit, we were already very savvy on video. All of our training for practitioners is online, with the exception of an in-person internship. And of course, their work with non-speakers is in person because they need to be there coaching that non-speaker. But they attend the training classes virtually. They submit videos that we review. So yes, we are using those kinds of platforms.
Great. And I know we do have a stop here in a few minutes, so we'll do one last question and then close out. But if there's any parting thoughts on technology, non-speakers, or really just a takeaway that you want everyone to leave with, what would it be? And again, I'll go to each of you.
I'm happy to start. We've talked a lot about this. What is automatable? Where can technology replace human presence, and where can't it or must it never? I think that's one of the critical elephants in the room, the virtual room here. We know that near field communication with human beings, non-spoken, is something that Princeton has been studying for years. We know that that telepathy is something that is going to come to the fore next year in a very, very big way, including scientific exploration of the telepathic ability, that competency. And so I think we're going to learn so much in the next couple of years about this. What we need to do, though, is recognize that standardization and also personalization are both competencies, critical enablers delivered by technology. And that we can't default to only human beings can do it. Human beings will be the essential part to the design of the technology, the content knowledge, the expertise of, like I said, the method of inquiry, for example. Expert teachers are necessary to deliver that, but can that be codified? Can that be standardized through iterative AI development process? And I'm not an expert there. I defer to Diwakar and others, but we think that it's going to be a marriage, and hopefully it's a healthy, but it's going to be a productive, it's going to be productive tension that gets us to that place where we serve the community at scale, at low cost, inclusively, while trying to optimize the human connection all along the way.
And I think I'd jump in and just kind of add to that is, we always have to remember that communication is by definition the exchange of information between two or more people. And it's essentially a very human thing, right? And so how do we marry the very human high touch with high tech? We start off low tech, and I think, David, to your point early on that, you're trying to wean from screen time, that is I've seen people with two devices in each hand, and they're still hovering over somebody else who's got another device in their hand. That one of my non-speakers referred to it as like a shark to blood. So how do we keep this very, very human trait of communication, which requires the interaction of two or more humans, with these amazing advances in technology? And that's the balance to me that we're always striving for. And I think we can do it.
Yeah, so I think I completely agree with David and the Evie, and I just think that there needs to be more research which reflects the lived experience. I think right now I can count the number of people doing that. I don't even need one hand, and that's very depressing. I think it needs to change. So the more we see fundamental research, more we see peer-reviewed publications, normalizing the conversation around the agency of non-speaking communication, and really just that's really a baggage which is kind of dragging this community down, and moving to more useful things like building tech which actually is useful than endlessly arguing some philosophical points, right? I think we need to get there. And the way to get there would be to form coalition, put out a lot of great research, peer-reviewed research, which can be irrefutable, and start moving towards a space where tech can be actually used to help people rather than just stop with answering some philosophical questions.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your time and expertise. We are all so grateful to be able to learn from you today. For everyone here, thank you for joining. We will follow up with the recording via email, and we hope that you'll continue to keep in touch with these folks and their work as well. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.